So unfortunately, even the best estate agents might get it wrong from time to time. It is important when vetting tenants that you set the parameters under which the estate agent is going to, the letting agent or rental agent is going to do the vetting. So certain things that you might be worried about that you want to let the rental agent know about. And if you're doing it yourself, obviously set your own parameters so you understand what makes a good tenant and what doesn't. Unfortunately, this is not foolproof. And we've seen this time and time again where unfortunately financial circumstances change, and it's only at that moment in time where you discover what a tenant's priorities really are. Some tenants, even in the worst financial circumstances, will prioritize the payment of rent, and some tenants, unfortunately, will not. And it depends on the nature of the tenant, and depends how abusive or how much the tenant knows on how to abuse the legal system for his or her own benefit. So what happens when a tenant fails to pay rent? Now, the simple answer to this, before even getting to the eviction component of this whole conversation, is that immediate action has to be undertaken. You cannot simply grant indulgences or ignore the fact that the tenant is paid in the hope that he will at some point or another have a change of heart and will pay whatever rent is due. It is an imperative that at the moment of default, the very, very next day, that you as a landlord take the necessary steps to place the tenant on terms. And guys, please remember, this is normally 20 business days under most circumstances with residential leases. So 20 business days is not a short period of time. So even if the tenant is promising to make payment and you've got such a soft heart, I would rather err on the side of caution and send out that letter, because guess what? Best case scenario, tenant pays, you get your money, and that letter of demand means nothing. But worst case scenario, you've given him an indulgence, 2 weeks go by, no payment is received, and you have not sent out a letter, and you've just lost 2 weeks. And guys, remember, 2 weeks of rent. So in 10,000 Rand rentals, 15,000 Rand rentals, that's half your month's rental. So just by granting him that 2-week indulgence and not taking the appropriate steps immediately, you're probably already looking at losing between 5 to 7,500 Rand for having done absolutely nothing. This isn't to say that by acting the very next day, the eviction is done and you lose no money, but you want to mitigate your potential losses. And by acting the next day, you mitigate this by, for example, 5,000 and 7,500 Rand. And also psychologically, please remember that it's usually the person that screams the loudest that gets the best result. If you take immediate steps and you're seen as a threat, a tenant will give you more attention than if you allow things to slide, do nothing, and just keep asking nicely. So unfortunately, this is why rental agents are built for this sort of thing, where they apply the necessary pressure in order to acquire payments. And we've seen this time and time again. If you take, for example, a company like Xpello, who we work very closely with and we're on their panel, Xpello barely ever needs to go to court. That is the reality. Xpello is so streamlined that as a landlord, as soon as something goes wrong and you report your matter to Xpello, they jump on it. They act so quickly and so efficiently that you find that the tenants will move out just because of the way that they approach it. So Xpello is similar. So they're not an insurance product. They're not a financial product, but one can think of them very similarly. You carry a risk that you're going to have a tenant that does not pay rental. And you want to make sure that the costs of potentially evicting this tenant are covered. You want to make sure that you've put this money aside, or that somebody is going to do it for you when something goes wrong. And that is Xpello's part in all of this. They receive a retainer from you on a monthly basis ahead of time. So you don't go to Xpello once your tenant has defaulted and you've never approached them before. So you approach them ahead of time. You ask them to review and assess the situation. If they're happy, they take on that risk. And they ensure that if something were to go wrong and this tenant does not pay rent and he has to be evicted, that they appoint the necessary attorneys like myself to attend to the eviction. Unfortunately, if you have not approached Xpello prior to the issue arising, then unfortunately it's too late to approach them then. I would still have a conversation with them just to maybe get onboarded for the next tenant that comes, but at that juncture, unfortunately, your only resolution or your only option is to approach the attorney directly, someone like myself, in order to attend to the eviction.